And I think first we should talk a little bit about your faith in me to not eat cupcakes. I did at least that one time. Do want to say good morning to everyone, especially those who might be watching online from wherever you are. And we welcome you. We're glad you're here. Sometimes you might watch this online, not necessarily this morning, but during the week or in weeks to come. And whether you're here with us this morning or whether you're watching from afar and hearing these messages, we're glad that you've decided to join us here at Elizabethtown Church of the Brethren, where we practice peace, service, and openness to all. We're glad you're here. What do you think of when you hear about a place called hell? Especially interesting to me is how young even the littlest of the little among us get indoctrinated with particular images of what this place called hell is or looks like. So as I am wont to do, as I like to do, I have been doing informal polls with people of all ages to see when you picture hell, what does it look like? And I get a lot of the same answers. A lot of fire, some sort of demon, pointy tail, horns, gates that lead into this fiery hellscape. It's a cave-like setting usually. There's hard labor. There's pain and suffering. I think you know the image well. A couple of weeks ago, we kind of looked at some of the images of Satan and where those images really didn't match, in the Bible anyway, didn't really match some of the images that we have in our heads. So today, to kind of round out the picture, I thought we'd not only talk about Satan, but we would talk about hell. And so here are a few just facts to get us going. If you were to take out the Pew Bibles, the International NIV right in front of you, if you were to take that out and you were to read it cover to cover, in its 66 books, you would find the word hell in 5 books. In 5 of those 66, you would find the word hell. Wonder if that's more or is that less than you thought? Think about it. Now, the word hell itself. Think about in your head. How many times do you think the word itself appears in your Pew Bible? 13. Again, I'm curious, is that more or fewer than you thought? It really surprised me as I was doing research because hell has such an outsized influence on our entire theological framework, right? That's what it holds in these little red books in your pew. Depending on which translation you use, you might find hell, the word hell, used up to 20 times. So, already we're beginning to see that what we thought about hell in the Bible may not be quite as weighty as we would have originally thought. For the sake of actually sinking our teeth into something this morning, and since we're a New Testament people, let's look at the 2 words that are used most often to depict what we think of as hell. In the New Testament, what 2 words get used to talk about what we typically think of as hell? Those 2 Greek words. The first one is Hades, right? That's familiar. And scripturally, that one's even in there. It's in there, I think, like 8 times or something, okay? So in addition to those times that I mentioned before, Hades is in there, I think, 8 times. All of those times are just in 3 books: Matthew, Luke, and Revelation. So, for those of you who know your Greek mythology, this is Hades, right? Hades was a Greek god who was the Lord of the underworld, an underworld that eventually took his name. As Lord of this underworld, he was responsible for those who had died and were buried. In Greek thought, he was not, I repeat, he was not an evil tormentor. But because of the fear of death, he was certainly not someone you wanted to run into either. In fact, according to the mythology, he was seen as this sort of indifferent, insouciant sort, like whatever, whatevs, as the kids say now, right? He was just interested in maintaining the cosmic balance. And so to do that, there were some dead people and there were some alive people, and he tried to keep it all even. So given that Hades was understood as the underworld, it's no surprise then that the word Hades was used to translate a number of different words and even concepts from the Hebrew Bible when it was translated into Greek. Right? So our Old Testament was written in Hebrew, and then it was translated into Greek. Greek was the language that our New Testament was written in. Okay? So here's some examples of words that were translated as Hades. The pit became Hades. Stillness, like an eternal stillness, became Hades. Death became Hades. Deep darkness became Hades. The Hebrew word Sheol was translated and written as Hades. My point is not to criticize those who did the translation. It made some sense, right? Especially when we think about this concept of Sheol. It was the realm of the dead in Jewish thought. But importantly, and similar to Hades, in the beginning, it wasn't a place of judgment. It was just a place where souls went. People needed to categorize where we went after we died somehow, and so that was how we categorized it. It's not quite the hell that we tend to think about. But it was separated into different compartments. And your compartments were determined by your earthly behavior to some degree. A great example of this in our New Testament is in the Gospel of Luke. The rich man and Lazarus. When we talk about the rich man and Lazarus, when you read that closely, you even see that the rich man goes to Hades, and there he is tormented. But if you read the grammar carefully, the rich man is actually within earshot of Lazarus. Lazarus calls up to him and says, "Please, can you help me out? Give me some relief. I'm struggling here." So clearly not this heaven way up here and hell way down here, and never the two shall meet. Right there in Luke, the rich man and Lazarus, they're kind of in the same place, but not really. One is being consoled while the other is being tormented. Are you with me so far? I know it's not always easy to follow, but as we wrap our heads around this concept of hell, it's important to understand some of these things. When the Hebrew scriptures were translated into Greek, many, many different Hebrew words were boiled down to the word Hades. And then when that was translated into English, many of the times that got translated as Hades, or stuck with Hades, or sometimes it even went and was translated as hell. But not the pit, not stillness, not Sheol. Hades was something different. So that's Hades. The other word is Gehenna, all right? So this is the word that's most often used in the New Testament. And I got a couple examples here. Matthew loved the word. "But I say to you that if you're angry with a brother or sister, you will be liable to judgment. And if you insult a brother or sister, you'll be liable to the council. And if you say, 'You fool,' you will be liable to the hell of fire." Seems pretty severe for what might be everyday slander these days. And more poignant than ever, given the state of dialogue in our denomination and in our district, I wonder how many of us risk this judgment. But what I want you to note, I didn't put that asterisk in there. This is from the New Revised Standard Version. This is in the Bible that, again, a couple of weeks ago, I held up a big fat Bible that I needed to have when I went to seminary. It was the NRSV. The asterisk for hell, it's Gehenna. So, you'll be liable to the Gehenna of fire. All right, here's another one. Matthew 5, same chapter, 29. If your right eye causes you to sin, tear it out and throw it away. Children's story, right? If it's better for you to lose one of your members than for your whole body to be thrown into Gehenna. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. It's better for you to lose one of your members than for your whole body to go into Gehenna. Boy, am I glad last week Pastor Pam explained that I don't necessarily need to read all this literally, or I would be without eyes and hands. If your right eye causes you to sin, tear it out. All right, Matthew 18. If your hand or foot causes you to stumble, cut it off and throw it away. It's better for you to enter life maimed or lame than to have two hands or feet and be thrown into the eternal fire. And if your eye causes you to stumble, tear it out and throw it away. It's better for you to enter life with one eye than to have two eyes and be thrown into the hell of fire. The word translated in each of these scriptures for hell is Gehenna. What is Gehenna? It was a valley outside the walls of Jerusalem. It was the dump. It was where everything got thrown, and like we do sometimes with trash, it was burned. It was perpetually on fire. And so Gehenna was the metaphor that Jesus often used to describe the opposite of the kingdom, the reign of God. If the reign of God was the correct way, was the right way, then Gehenna was the wrong way. If Jesus' way is life, then Gehenna represents death. Gehenna in real life was a place that was so terrible, so rotting, so stinking and burning, awful, that it was used to scare the hell out of people. It's used to straighten them out, to straighten us out. And it really was a hellish place. The roots go back even further than that. In Old Testament times, it was a place where idolatrous rituals were practiced, even including child sacrifice. In Jesus' day, it was this ever-burning pile of refuse, a trash heap. It was no place that you wanted to be. It was the depository for the bodies of criminals after execution. And yes, it was eternally burning to help keep the smell and the volume of trash to as little as possible. It was a hellscape. It was an absolute wasteland, both literally and figuratively. It was a place that was full of rot and decay, scavengers, and the nightmarish memories of brutal and heinous events that had happened there before. So, let us be clear. Gehenna was a flaming place of death. It was not a Satan-guided netherworld filled with tridents and demons and pointy tails. And all of Jesus' listeners would have known that. It's also clear that Jesus used this hyperbole, this exaggeration, to make a point. Because none of us think that what Jesus is actually suggesting is that we should be gouging out our eyes or lopping off our arms and feet. It's interesting that this is what Gehenna looks like today. Looks like a nice park. I guess there is such a thing as redemption. What do I think of hell? Well, before I feel too comfortable that the notions of hell are somehow debunked as some myth, I'm reminded of what Jesus was really getting at in these scriptures. Because we can't gloss over the fact that Jesus' listeners knew that Gehenna was a trash heap. We also cannot gloss over the fact that they knew that Jesus was warning them, warning us, about something more than just a trash heap. Gehenna was a real place that Jesus used as an example of what our lives look like if we allow sin to creep in and to take over. This is the place that Jesus described when he talked about what it's like to be sinful, to be separated from God. If sin is a separation of us from God, of us from our brothers and sisters, then that's what it's going to be like when you're separated. It's going to be rotten, stinking, filthy, terrible, burning, no place that we want to be. It's the end of the road for those who choose the wrong way in life. And we know because we see it. That's what life looks like when we make the wrong choices. Now, this is somewhat counter to the stereotypical view of hell that is often perpetuated in Christianity, that if you don't believe up here a certain set of principles or pray a particular prayer in order to get to heaven, then, well, the only other place to go is really hell, right? Jesus' message was that if we live lives that allow sin to creep in, we will be headed the wrong way and end up in our own self-made hellscape. Of course, like I said with the kids, the overarching good news in all of this is that when we do stumble, which God knows we will, there is always an opportunity for turning ourselves around. There is always an opportunity for forgiveness. There is always an opportunity for this to become this. That's how it works in God's world. There's an opportunity to walk away from the stinking, rotting Gehennas of our own doing, from the trash in our lives. There's an opportunity to walk Jesus' way. There's an opportunity to encourage one another along. There's an opportunity to ask for help when we need it. There's an opportunity to listen for God. And so, sisters and brothers, what we do together is this. We turn from hell. We turn from Hades. We turn from Gehenna. We turn from the pit, the stillness, and we turn toward life. We turn toward the reign of God, the kingdom, the life that is really worth living. Amen.